Hey guys, been working all weekend on a big project and wanted to share a little bit about it. I've spent the weekend researching metabolism, the last 100 years or so actually, and looking at all the variables that go into calculating what the average human metabolism is. And now I'm back home and just winding some things down and thought I'd come down here in the basement just to record this little quiet space away from the family and all that. And I thought, it's kind of appropriate because behind me you see a lot of junk. I was gonna make some kind of comment about why it's there, but this is actually how our basement always looks. And there are some things that are useful, like the tools back there. We need good tools. That's what I'm going to go over when I discuss metabolism. But there's a lot of things we just don't need. Kind of like that easy bake oven. My youngest daughter's 14, going on 15. I don't think she's used that in a decade or so. So sometimes you gotta kind of clean up and streamline what you need. There's been a lot of talk about metabolism lately, and it's always a little bit ironic to me because I've been doing this for 20, 25 years, and so I see trends and fads come and go. And way back in the day, maybe 20 years ago, when I started bringing flexible dieting principles into at least the fitness industry, we talked a lot about macronutrients, and I was the person who said, hey, let's just start tracking that. Let's look at protein, carbs, and fats instead of just rigid exchange lists and so forth. And it was a very hard sell. People didn't understand it, and it was extra work because you had to do some calculations. And now today you can't go to a forum or a discussion anywhere without people saying, hey, what are your macros? What are your numbers? And that's kind of the language we use now. So I like that. We've come a long way. But I wanted to reboot a little bit, and that's why last year I spent the entire year doing some pretty exhaustive literature reviewing of macronutrients, calories, metabolism, and so forth, and putting together a project where I wanted to see exactly what some of the most updated research was on metabolism. This started back in the early 1900s, actually, 1913, 16, 18. They started doing some calculations. Some of those original formulas were updated, but they originally looked at things like gender, obviously, age, and weight. Those are the primary factors. And a lot of assumptions are made anytime you create an algorithm like that. If you ask somebody their age, you're attributing a binary equation to that somewhere. So if you're asking my age, you must assume that at a certain age your metabolism is different than another age. So every time you do that, you get those measurements, you're looking at some of that. Some of the research was done with respired gases and looking at exact cellular energy. That obviously is the most helpful. So a lot of equations, a lot of things floating around over the last 100 years or so. And I did something a little bit unique, which was looking at the best research that I think is the most current. And then I kind of reverse engineered it and looked at how it would stand up against the average American. So I looked at the average age of the American male right now and female, look at the average weight, all those different variables, and height, because that is a factor. Every inch or so after a certain median, there is an extra amount of calories you would burn per hour, your basal metabolic rate. Again, an assumption. A wide range of phenotypes, genetics in our DNA, but there has to be a bell curve, and we're on that plot line somewhere. So interestingly, as I've been doing this in the last year and a half, I mentioned, I think in a previous video, that I had recently done a body comp scan. I hadn't done that in a long time. Back when I was at the IU Med Center, I did tons of hydrostatic weighing, and we were always collecting data for different things, and so I have tons of that research on myself. And then when I moved to Evansville, some physician friends of mine had DEXA scanners, and they were always interested in having test subjects of different demographics, and so I've got some of that data. And I just had not gathered anything like that personally for a long, long time. So I had done one of the best, highest models of an in-body scan that's supposed to be as good as a DEXA scanner. And I found out, because I got the printout and compared it to all the other data I had on myself for the last 20 years, that I had lost a little bit more lean body mass than I thought. And so, nothing riles me up more than that. So I immediately decided I'm going to start tracking my food, tracking my macronutrients, and I'm going to really work hard at regaining some of that lean body mass. I've had a few injuries over the last couple years, and I knew I was down, but I didn't know I was down that much, so it kind of ticked me off. So for the last 6 weeks, I've been tracking my food, my macronutrients, for the first time in a decade. And in that decade, I kept my body weight exactly where I wanted it, within a 5-pound range for almost 10 years without tracking. Then, after coming off of these injuries, I allowed my body weight to come up actually about 20 pounds slowly over 2 years. Very planned. Actually, I'd only planned about 15, but went 20. Reined it back in, and now all of a sudden I'm tracking. I did know this. I knew my protein was lower because I'm just not a competitive pro bodybuilder any longer. Didn't care about that. But you probably heard me whine about having a slow metabolism and that kind of thing, clinical hypothyroidism. All those things are true, and wah, 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 I can't eat as much as even my wife. But I started tracking my food, and some trends appeared. I've been tracking now for 6 weeks, and interestingly, my protein was actually lower than I even thought was low. Pretty meager, and my goal going into tracking was right away to start bringing protein up, which I did. Probably an entire meal's worth of protein, and still I'm at a paltry 20% of my calories coming from protein. So I still got work to do, and that's what a good tool, good tracking can do for you. I was not aware, how low I was, so this is good objective information. So I'm tracking that, carbs, fat, obviously. I've even got my workouts here. So here's what's really interesting, is in the last 6 weeks, my net average weight, because I weigh daily, I want those extra data points so I know exactly that I'm getting the most objective, clear, mean averages. My weight has gone down a grand total of 0.23 pounds in the last 6 weeks. So all of this tracking has resulted in a meager about 4 ounces or so, 3 or 4 ounces of body fat loss or weight loss. Now, I do know that my goal of bringing lean body mass back up is working. My strength, I'm tracking squat and deadlift strength over here. That's gone up about 100 pounds on each lift. Hit another PR today on squats. So I know I'm at least going in the right direction. My protein is coming up, so I know I'm going in the right direction. Subjectively, even my weight, my waist, I should say, I've been able to cinch a belt notch or two tighter, seeing a little extra vascularity here and there, all the cool stuff bodybuilders like to see. So I know I am getting a little leaner. I know I'm gaining some strength. So all we can say conclusively about that, with a lot of data points, is that maybe my weight has changed a tiny amount. 1 or 2 pounds of gained lean body mass, 1 or 2 pounds of lost body fat, resulting in about a net 0. So a lot of people ask, Joe, how do I know what my metabolism is? How do I know? And I can point to a formula, which again has a lot of variables and assumptions, or you could go do a metabolic cart test, those kind of things, cost you hundreds of dollars, not very feasible. Or you can do this. If you track your food precisely, I can now see that my exact 6-week averages, 20% of my calories coming from protein, 48% from carbs, 32% from fat. My average calories are exactly 2299. So I've had a net 0 effect on my weight. Maybe, like I said, negligible amounts of body fat loss, which is great. But I can at least say right now, my basal metabolic rate plus my activity level is allowing me to consume 2,300 calories without any change. So that's clearly my functional metabolic rate. If I want to keep losing body fat or escalate that a little bit, now I have a great baseline from which I can move from. So my plan, because I now have this great objective data, is to say, okay, with a baseline functional metabolic rate of 2,300 calories, my protein levels still suck. That's 116 grams of protein a day. How are you going to get stronger doing that? So clearly my protein needs to come up. I'm going to go upstairs after this video and bulk cook. Just like college, I'm going to be getting out some chicken breast, some ground beef, and getting that ready for the week. My fat, I definitely have room to come down. I'm averaging 82 grams of fat. 32% of my calories are from fat, so that can come down a little bit. Carbs are probably fine. And this is all pretty intuitive eating. I've been trying to make some changes and so forth, but it just has not been objective. It's more data collection. Now I'm going to start making some changes based on that data. So what I wanted to leave you guys with is just a little bit of a look on how you can figure out your metabolism and what you need just by simply tracking. A lot of people would say, well, that's not accurate. I want to go do a DEXA scan or this or a metabolic cart test and get all these fancy things, and that's great. You can do that. I love having that kind of data. That's what I do. But you don't need it. This is truly more accurate for me because every one of those variables in every algorithm is accounted for because this is my food, my data collected over 6 weeks on me. It's not just a bland generic formula. So great information on just how you can determine that. You guys can do a little research on metabolism if you want to look at some of those things like the Benedict or the Harris-Benedict equations and things like that, all the updates, all the ways that we even calculate metabolism in the lab and all that. But this is where it all starts. It just starts with being objective, being accurate, having good data, and then being able to make changes. And this is the scientific method, by the way. You make an observation, then you make a change, you document what that change is, you observe the results, and then you interpret those results, and then you make another change. And then you keep gathering data, gathering data, gathering data. So anyway, hope that helps, guys, a little bit on metabolism. And the stuff that we're working on is to make this more applicable to you, more practical, more usable. So look for some of those things from our company here in the near future. And hope you guys had a great weekend. Thanks.